Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you Tango Down, a man-to-man urban combat game released by the Tiny Battles Publishing and designed by Greg Porter. I plan to do several videos about this game, and today I would like to show you the basics of this game. It is a single-man scale game, not a very popular scale among war games. I think that I discovered only a few games with such a scale, and even less when it comes to the modern games. So far, the only game that I played with such a scale was the Cry Havoc family, but these are games dedicated to the medieval battlefield, and this one is a modern combat game designed to show fights that might take place inside the building, mostly with some kind of special forces against terrorists, mobsters, etc., etc. So today I'm going to focus on the game and on the mechanics, basics, etc. And later in my further videos I would like to show you how this game works when it comes to the scenarios. So Tango Down comes with the rulebook, a two-sided board that shows two various types of building. Here we have some kind of, well, mansion or office, and the other side shows something that looks more like a mall or factory. Then we have a couple of counters. We have counters for special forces that are blue, and the couples for their enemies, often called tangos. And you can tell that these counters are pretty big, and I think this is good. Everything is nice and easy to see, to sew. Next, let's cover the counters. Each counter comes with the three basic factors. First one in the upper left corner is skill. It tells us how good this character is in shooting. Next, we have movement. This tells us how many movement points such character has. And finally, this one is toughness. Toughness tells us how tough, I guess it's self-explaining, character is, but also it works like a kind of cover. If your character is hit, then toughness gives you a chance to be safe from being wounded. Okay, next, there are several special units that have their own special symbols on the counters. First of all are leaders. They have this mark there. Next are fanatics. They have such a flame there. And marksmen, they have this target symbol. There are a couple of markers that are used in the game, and I will cover them later. And finally, there is a third type of characters that are used in a couple of scenarios. These are hostages. As you can see, hostages have no skill. This means that they cannot fire, they have only move, and they have cover of 0. So now, since we know the characters that we are going to use in this game, let's talk a bit about the game flow. A game is divided into turns. Each scenario, and we have about 10 scenarios in this game, so I think this is pretty good number, has its own dedicated number of turns. And now, each turn has a couple of phases. In the phase 1, we are making a roll, and this is the roll we are going to make only once per turn. We are making a roll to see who is going to have initiative. Each side makes 1d6 roll and adds the number of leaders it has on board. So, for example, if tangos have 2 leaders and special forces have 1 leader, then tangos add +2 and special forces add +1. we are making a roll and see. For example, let's say that there was 3 for tangos and 6 for special forces. So this means that special forces have initiative in this turn. It is quite important to remember who had initiative in the turn, because if there is a draw, then in the next turn the side that had initiative in the last turn loses this initiative. So for example, let's say that special forces won initiative this time and we get a tie in the next turn, so this time tangos will have initiative. When we know who has initiative, we are going to make next step, and this is the step we will be making many times during the turn. So first of all, we are drawing a card. There is a deck of cards here that you need to shuffle a lot during the game, and you are drawing a card. If this is a normal card like that one, you can keep it. And next, when you get this card, you can activate one of your troops, men. So let's say that we have this one and tangos have that one. Of course, there is usually much more characters on board, but I am just explaining. So now you have your men on the board. You can have, of course, much more of them, like this one. But when you get your activation, you have to choose one of them and perform actions. You can make 1 or 2 actions with a single man. The choice is yours. You can make 1 or you can make 2. If you will make 2, when you make action, you are placing action marker on him. So let's assume that he's making 1 action, so we are placing action 1. And after making 1 action, you may say, I am done. And enemy gets his own activation, he draws his own card, gets this card or keeps this card or uses this card, and then he makes his action, action or actions, he finishes his stuff, and then you get your own activation again, you draw another card, you activate one of your men. And now, like I said, you can make 1 action, and then this allows you to activate this man again in the next activation, for example. But if you will go into 2 activations, this character is done until the end of the turn. If character has 2 actions, it cannot do any more stuff during its own turn until you will draw some special card that allows you to do so. For example, we get Born Ready that allows you to remove 1 action from one of your units. So let's say I activated this guy, he performed 2 actions, then Tangos activated him, he performed his 2 actions, and now it's back to me. I can play this card and now I can remove 1 action from him, so he gets 1 action again and he can be back into action. Turn may end in the 2 ways. First, if all characters of 1 player are marked with action 2 or they are dead. If there are all characters on the one side marked with action 2, then the turn ends instantly. But there is one more way, often quickest way, to finish the turn. There are 2 end turn game cards in the deck. If you will draw second of this card, then the turn ends instantly. This makes the game a bit less predictable, because you may get end turn just as your first card, and then the next end turn card as your second, third or fourth card, and then the turn ends very quickly. When the turn ends, it doesn't mean that you cannot do anything. After the end of the turn, all characters that are on board and have no action markers on them can make a move, but this is very important, they cannot move onto a square which is in the enemy line of sight. And then if they are altering, So for example, if we get a second action card and we have situation like that, then this guy cannot do anymore because he's marked with action. Same goes to him. So now, since let's say it was special forces activation, so this guy moves here. He cannot move here because he would be in the enemy line of sight. He moves there. He's marked with action. Then he moves here. He is marked with action. And then he moves there, he's marked with action. And this concludes the stuff. You can only move one square during this special end turn movement. And after you finish this movement, then you have to. First, you are removing all your action markers from the board. Next, if you have more than one card next to you, you have to discard these cards. You can keep one card and all the others have to be discarded. Put them all together back into the deck along with all the end cards and shuffle them well, because you will need this deck during the turn 2. So that's how this game works when it comes to the flow. And now let's talk about mechanics a bit. Okay, when you activate your character, you can make several actions. First of them is move. You can move your character, and there are basically a couple of ways to move. First of all is a normal movement. You spend one action and you can move your character with a half, yes, a half of its movement points. So for example, he has movement points of 4, so if he's activated with an action of 1, he can make 2 movement with 2 of his movement points. If you will activate him with 2 actions, he can make a movement of 4. So this is quite important. When you move onto the next square, you can change your facing as you like. The character has always to be directed in a certain direction. This triangle here tells us on which direction this character is looking at, but it is pretty important. And next, most of the squares cost us simply 1 movement point to enter. So if we are passing through the door, we are spending 1 movement point. There is one major difference, and these are these dark squares. When you are entering these dark squares, these are obstructed squares, you have to spend 2 movement points. So for example, he starts here, and now let's say he wants to get here. He needs to move here and then there. It will be 2. But if he will go here, he will have to spend 2 movement points and he has to stop. Or he will have to spend 1 more action to move further. And next, there is a special way of moving called dash. When you are performing a dash, you have to declare it before you are starting your movement, and you are getting 1 more movement point per action. So for example, let's say he wants to dash and he spends action 1, so he gets 3 movement points. 1, 2, 3. If he will declare a dash and spend 2 actions, then he would have 4 plus 2, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a good way to move pretty fast, but when you are performing a dash, it is easier to hit you. So remember that using a dash is a good way of moving when there is no enemies in your line of sight, but when there are enemies who can hit you, then using a dash might be quite hazardous. Also, let's say you don't want to move, but you simply want to change your facing. And to do so, you also have to spend action. Yes, you don't spend additional actions for changing your facing when you are moving, but if you simply don't want to move, let's say you are here, your enemy is there, and you want to change your facing. You don't want to move. That even so, you have to spend one action to change your facing, and then eventually you have to spend another action to fire on him. So this covers the movement. The other actions are focused on combat. Let's cover it. There are a few ways of attacking the enemy. Let's start with a basic attack on the enemy. So let's say that he starts his activation like that, and he wants to fire onto this tango. So how to make it? First of all, you have to count the distance between your character and your target. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our basic to hit number is 5. But that's not all. First, we have to check if there are no obstructions on our line of sight, including the hex we are targeting. So there is one obstruction, and each obstruction counts as 2 hexes. Sorry, 2 squares. Yeah, too many wargames. So it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our to hit number increases to 6. Next, our skill allows us to reduce our to hit number. So now we have 2, so this is 4. Notice that there are situations when your skill might be negative. For example, this wounded tango has a skill of -1, and such skill increases your to hit number instead of raises your to hit number instead of making it smaller. So for example, if he would be firing, this -1 would make this 4 higher number. But we don't have to worry about it. We get 2. So now we get 4. If there is action marker on your character already before you declare the shoot, then you also have this action marker onto this value. So for example, let's say that he made a move first, then he declared his combat, then he would have to add +1, so it would be 5. Finally, there is a marksman. Marksman has his special option that allows him to make a shot that costs him 2 actions, but it allows him to reduce his to hit number by 3, but only if he would spend 2 actions on firing onto the enemy. So when you know what your to hit number is, then you are making 2d6 roll. If you will get a result which is higher or equal than your to hit number, then you score a hit on the enemy. So let's say we got 9, so yes, we scored a hit. If you will get natural 2, this is always a miss. And if you will get natural 12, this is always a hit. After you score a hit on the enemy, you have to check what happened. There are 2 ways. He might be wounded or he might be pinned. If the number you get, let's say it was 9, is higher than your to hit number and his toughness, then he is wounded. He's flipped on the other side, and if he was already flipped, then he's dead. If the number you rolled is the equal to your to hit number and his toughness, for example, let's say I would roll 6 and we get 5 plus 1, so this would be 6, then he is only pinned. This means that you have to place 1 action on him. If there would be 2 actions on him already, then this is nothing. And here's where leaders come in handy, because if we have leader who has a line of sight to our target, then our target's toughness is increased by 1. So that's quite important to remember, and that's why leaders are important. And finally, there are fanatics. If fanatic is wounded for the first time in the game, he may ignore this first wound. But only this first wound. If he will be hit again, then he is wounded normally, and if he is wounded again, he is dead and gone. The other way to attack the enemy is performing pop-up shot. Pop-up shot is a way of attacking when you have no line of sight to the enemy. For example, let's assume this guy has no line of sight to this tango, and he wants to make pop-up shot. How pop-up shot works? You are making only one hex movement, and you are making a shot, and you are getting back onto your initial hex. It all costs you one action, so this is pretty good. But, of course, there is a price to pay, and in such a situation, you have to get +2 to your 2-hit number when you are performing pop-up shot. So let's assume he makes a pop-up shot. This is his first action, so he goes here, and now 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6 because of the pop-up shot, and -2 because of his skill, so his 2-hit number will be 4. Not bad, after all. And after he performs his pop-up shot, he returns onto this hex, and he is marked with action 1. The next option to attack is to lay suppressive fire. You can spend your action to perform a suppressive fire, and then you are marked with suppressive fire markers. How suppressive fire works? It hits all the enemies in the line of sight. So all of these 3 men would be hit by suppressive fire. So this is something that you have to use cautiously, because it is easy to get some friendly fire. When you are performing suppressive fire, then you are hitting all the targets in the line, but you get +3 to your 2-hit number. So it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for him, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for him, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 for him. Then you are keeping a suppressive marker after you are perform your shooting, and if anyone else will move in the line of sight of your suppressive fire, then he's also hit. Suppressive fire ends when you declare so during your activation, or you are making any other action with a firing character. There are 2 important things to remember about suppressive fire. First, smoke is not working as an obstacle for the suppressive fire. I will cover smoke later, but for now it is important to remember that smoke creates additional obstacles on the squares, but when you lay a suppressive fire, you can ignore smoke. And the second thing important to remember is that when you perform suppressive fire with your marksman, then you are not allowed to get this -3 special skill of marksman for the suppressive fire. You can also, of course, use your own skill for the suppressive fire, but you can not get this additional 3 from the marksman. Next thing we have to cover is flanking. If you are firing on the enemy on the hex, and this enemy was the target of the attack coming from a different direction this turn, mark this hex as flanked. All the attacks on this hex will get -1 for the range. Also, if you are firing on the enemy who is back to you, then you also get flanked marker. Next thing we have to cover is special equipment. There is not much of the special equipment in this game, but there are some of these. And first of all, we have grenades, smoke grenades, stun grenades, and breaching charges. You can get these with in the two ways. First of all, you can get some thanks to the scenario, because some scenarios gives you grenades, breaching charges, so at the beginning of the game. The other way, much more common to get these, is to get them via cards. When you are drawing a card, you might get a card that says grenade. Then you are free to use this card as grenade. Notice that using any kind of grenades count as one action. So using this card will be also one action for your soldier. Now, how to have fun with grenades? First of all, there are two ways of throwing grenades. First one is simply throwing it on the square you can see. Then you have to count the number of squares, remembering about the 6 squares limit range for the grenades. So let's assume I'm going to throw it here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -2 for my range. So throwing a grenade here would require 4 or more to toss it onto this square. The next way is to toss the grenade on the square you cannot see. If you are adjacent to the square that leads inside the room or corridor, and there is open way like or doorway, you are free to toss a grenade inside. But it will be harder. It costs you additional +3 for each square. So for example, let's say that he wants to toss a grenade here. It would cost him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, -2, 8. So throwing grenade onto this hex, onto this square, would cost us 8. If you score a hit, then your grenade makes an attack against the character on the square, and of course toughness is being used. If there is more than one character onto this square, then the second attack is made with the same grenade, but the second character has his toughness increased by 2. Finally, all the adjacent squares that are not marked with walls, including diagonal ones, are attacked by the grenade as well, with a skill of 0 against the target number of 6, including all the normal modifiers. But what if grenade misses? If such thing happened, then the opposing player has the opportunity to place this grenade on any of the adjacent squares to the square which was the target of the attack, but it has to be a square that it can have a connection. For example, it cannot place this grenade on the other side of the wall, but for example he may place it here. Next, you have to compare the roll you made to the number on this square. If it is lower, then it hits, and same like all the other normal grenade attack. If it misses again, then it cannot be replaced and it is removed for good. And that's all when it comes to the normal grenades. Next, we have stun grenades. Stun grenades are working just like any other grenade, but their attack is different, because stun grenades can never wound the enemy, but if enemy is hit by stun grenade, then he is instantly marked with action 2. And next we have smoke grenades. When you are tossing a smoke grenade, you perform the same procedure as with any other grenades, But if it hits the destined hex, you are placing smoke 2 marker onto such square. If it misses, then the enemy is choosing a square adjacent to the square you wanted to throw the grenade on, and then the smoke is placed on such a square. Smoke grenade cannot hurt enemy in any way. And finally, breaching charge. Like grenades, you can get breaching charge at the beginning of the scenario or due to the cards. Breaching charge is something like a portable door. When you are adjacent to the wall hex, no matter if it's exterior or interior wall, you may spend one action to use your breaching charge. It is removed, and then you have to place breach on such a square. You can see these triangles here, and they are telling us in which direction breach works. You have to place smoke 1 marker onto the square where you used your breaching charge, and if there are any enemy characters on next to this square, onto this square, they have to be marked with action 1. Next thing we have to cover are reactions. There are two types of reactions into this game: reaction fire and reaction movement. Let's start with reaction fire. When your character enters square and there are enemy units that have free actions and have line of sight to you, they may declare reaction fire. But notice, only one enemy unit may fire at you on the one square. So, for example, this Special Forces soldier enters this square. Both of these tangos have free action, but only one of them can fire at him on this square. If he would move on, then again one of them would be allowed to fire on him on such a square. Opportunity fire works mostly like a normal fire, but it gives you additional +2 modifier. So let's assume that he wants to fire at him in reaction. He gets 1, 2, 3, 4 because of the opportunity fire, and -1, so it will be 3. When you are performing opportunity fire, you of course have to spend action 1. Another way to get opportunity fire is the situation when enemy performs pop-up attack. So for example, let's assume we have this Special Forces soldier here. He declares pop-up attack and moves onto this square, but before he will perform his pop-up attack, he can be fired by any of these two tangos. And when you are performing opportunity fire versus pop-up attack, you get not +2 but +3, because enemy is in your line of sight for the shorter time. I know that there is a lot of these modifiers, but all of them are together onto the last page of the rulebook, so it's easy to get them and to see what's going on and which modifiers you are going to use. The next thing is reaction movement. When enemy enters your line of sight during his movement and he finishes his movement, let's assume that he wanted to go here, and you still have your actions, then you may instantly spend one of your actions or more to move somewhere else. So for example, let's assume that he moved here, and this guy is afraid of him. So he decides to spend 2 of his actions to move 1, 2, 3, and 4. So he will get out of this room before he will be attacked. This makes the game more dynamic and more fluid. Next, there are some advanced special rules used in the certain scenarios only. First, we have hostages. Hostages have no skill, movement of 4 and toughness of 0. They can only move if there is friendly unit on the same square and there are no enemy units on adjacent squares. So, to make these hostages move, first we have to kill this tango and then we have to make our guy to move here. If this tango will be eliminated, we are free to get out. Otherwise, this hostage won't move. Hostages are not activated independently. They are activated only when if there is a friendly unit on the same square. They cannot attack, and you cannot use action cards on them. And they cannot, of course, they cannot be used for any kind of action or combat. Save to the fact that they can be attacked by the other soldiers. If hostage is wounded, he is flipped on the other side when his movement is revealed by lowered by 2. Next, there is one special hostage called Sleeper. As you can see, he is a tango who acts like a hostage, but in fact he is still the enemy. How to reveal the sleeper? Sometimes scenario tells you so, but in general, if it is wounded, it is always revealed. If the player to whom a sleeper belongs decides to do so, or you want to use a card that requires the usage of sleeper, for example, you want to throw a grenade with a use of the sleeper, or you want to heal him. If the sleeper is revealed, then you have to replace him with the counter that scenario tells you tells you so, because scenario always tells you that on which tango should be placed on the place of sleeper. If sleeper was wounded, then our tango is also wounded. So if let's say that this is sleeper and somehow he was wounded, then he is flipped on the other side, and now we have to replace him with a wounded tango. Next, we have barricades. There are two types of barricades, and scenario always tells us if this barricade is permanent or not. If the barricade is permanent, it remains on the square until the end of the game, or if it is not permanent, then it is removed after the first unit crosses it. A barricade always have this arrow that tells us in which side it is directed. So any fire through the barricade coming from the direction that this arrow points gets +2 to the effective range. And if you want to cross the barricade from this direction, you have to spend 2 additional movement points to move through. Next, character might be equipped with assault shield. Scenario allows us to do so. We cannot get it via cards, and when your character is equipped with assault shield, it lowers its skill by 2, its movement by 1, but it increases its toughness by 3. And it is pretty important to remember that assault shield works only against the fire which is performed from the front aspect of our soldier. So it won't help us if they are firing at us from behind. And finally, melee. There are situations, and there can happen only because of the special scenario rules, where your character might be out of ammo. In such a case, the only way it can attack the enemy is the melee. You can perform melee on the enemy which is on the adjacent hex only. It costs you one action, and it goes on normally, like any other kind of combat, but there is one important thing to remember about, that your skill is reduced by 6 when you are performing melee. So let's assume that he wants to attack him with melee, so it will be 2 minus 6. So his skill will be -4 when he performs such attack. And another important thing about melee is that none of that character which was attacked with by melee or any other character on such a square cannot perform normal rifle combat until they are out of melee. There are some other things like doors, time bomb or briefcase, but these are used in the certain scenarios only, and they haven't their own rules, but only scenario tells you what to do with these special things. So this would cover most of the game rules. There are some other things that can be used optional as optional rules, but I'm not going to care about them now. I wanted to show you the general idea of this game in this video, and I hope I was able to help you. If you will have any questions about this game, feel free to ask, and remember that I'm going to record a couple of playthroughs of this game to show you it better, so sooner or later there will be several playthroughs of the scenarios from Tango Down. So if you are more interested in this game, feel free to wait a bit and you will see more Tango Down action on my channel. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching and see you next time.